Welcome to the Women on the Rise podcast. I'm Jen Blandos, and I am so excited to share with you that for the next 30 days, I am introducing you to 30 of Female Fusion's members from around the world. They are going to share with you their stories of entrepreneurship, their highs, the lows, what inspired them to get into business, which I hope will inspire you along your entrepreneurial journey. Welcome to the Woman on the Rise podcast, and today I'm in London and I'm interviewing one of our fabulous members here who is a lawyer, Geeta Daswani, who works as a corporate lawyer here in the UK. And I wanted to introduce her to you and talk all things legal, how it's related to small businesses. Welcome to the podcast, Geeta.
Thanks, Jen.
So I'm really delighted to have you, and I love geeking out on law and talking about how that relates to business, because it's so interesting that it's one of those things we don't think about, but it's so important as well. So before we jump in, maybe if you want to tell everybody a little bit about you and your business that you've built here in London as well.
Yeah, sure. So, I am a sole practitioner. I started my own firm in 2019. Not the best time considering the pandemic followed soon after. But it's been a wonderful journey, Jen, because, being a sole practitioner allows me to work with the kind of clients I want to work with. And as you said, it is really interesting. I love the world of business, and that's what I specialize in. So my firm, my practice is very niche. Commercial and corporate is all that I do. On the non-contentious side, so I don't do disputes. But the idea is to help businesses create that solid legal framework that can actually help mitigate risks for them.
Yeah, I mean, so important as well.
Yeah.
And I love what you said too, just from like the owning a business side, that isn't it so nice that when you have your own business, your own practice, that you work with who you want to work with.
Yes, exactly. And I love all my clients. And in fact, sometimes I have to be, clients do become friends. And then sometimes you got to think, oh, am I a professional or am I their friend? But it's lovely to have that kind of relationship as well.
But I think when you're a smaller business, and I find this even within Female Fusion and with some of our members, that there are people that you meet that you never would have necessarily have met, and they become your business besties and very close friends because you're going through similar things at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And most of my clients are actually small business owners, SMEs as well, but I enjoy working with the smaller ones because I feel like I'm a part of their journey, and I can relate to so much of the stuff that they are going through. And I always tell them, think of your legal framework as the roots of a tree. So if the roots are solid, your tree will grow, it'll flourish, it'll bear fruit, and that's it.
Such a great analogy with that as well. And so many questions. So first, before we go into, because I would love this session as well to be something that a number of businesses can learn from, because we haven't talked about law at all on the podcast yet. So I'm really glad that we're going to be able to talk about that. But I would love to hear a bit more about you and your business and kind of talk about how you're running your business. And one of the things I would love to hear your view on, when we run our businesses, it's not easy. I mean, it's not easy having our own business. Yeah. And as we were saying, it's always nice to work with people who we want to work with. What do you do when you have a client come to you who's maybe not like aligned with the same values or the same ethics that you have in business? How does that work for you as a lawyer and as a business owner?
So, I mean, as a lawyer, maybe there's an added layer as well, because we are a regulated profession. So to start with, the first check that I have to do is, am I conflicted? And if I am, if there is any kind of conflict of interest, that's a straight no. Not because I don't want to work with the person, but because we have this professional code of conduct to adhere to, and I can't. We then also have KYC checks and AML checks. So there are these additional layers, and if something doesn't, if it's not right, and if it doesn't fulfill the criteria that they're supposed to fulfill as per the professional code of conduct, then there is no, not only me, it's any lawyer, they will not be able to proceed with the client. In terms of ethics and values, I don't know, as they say, you attract what you want. And I'm trying to consciously apply that.
Yeah, because I'm wondering, so one of the things for me that I decided in my business is that there were certain industries that I was like, I disagree with. I'm not going to work with them.
Correct.
And for me, one of them was arms manufacturers.
Yeah.
And actually, when I had my other business, I actually had an arms manufacturer come to me and ask if we would do work for them. And I was like, and the job would have paid a lot of money. And I was like, no, I don't want to work for you.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, fortunately, I haven't had that situation. And fortunately, by God's grace, I've always attracted the kind of clients that, I want to work with. And all the networking that I do, I'm always, sort of reminding people I want to work with ethical businesses, cruelty-free, sustainable businesses, change-led businesses, women-led businesses. And I think when you repeat your call to action so many times, somehow they remember you, and that's the kind of clients you then start attracting as well.
Yeah, that's so important as well, and to be really clear on who you want to serve, right?
Yeah. Because I mean, it's not just the numbers. Having your own business, it's the reason you have your own business is you want it to feel rewarding. Also, because you're working so hard, you don't want to be working hard for a feeling that is not a happy feeling.
So true. That's what I love about having a business. We make our own hours. Normally they're a lot longer than what we had in the day job, but you control those, right? So it is, for example, if you want to go work on holiday or work in a different country or go visit your parents, that you can actually go and do that and work remotely, where maybe if you worked for a large organization that wouldn't always be possible.
Yeah, I mean, of course, when you're in employment, it's a lot more structured. And even, I mean, the way I run my firm is I do follow, I do pretend like it's, it's a city law firm, and like these are the work hours and all of that, but it all depends on deadlines and how urgent. Sometimes I have to work on urgent contracts. And
I have a question for you about urgency, actually, and I think it's probably not just lawyers, it's a lot of entrepreneurs where you do have the client or the customer who wanted it yesterday and who are very demanding and expect you to be able to deliver something urgently. How do you as a lawyer manage that? Is it just triple the price, or?
No. People have been advising me to do this. I haven't, but I feel like, so I always start with a preliminary call to understand if I am the right fit for it or not. And if I feel like this is something I can deliver, or sometimes actually requirements even change along the way. I have had a situation like that when I was working through my cousin's wedding, because suddenly there was that sense of urgency, which I didn't know before. But once I've committed, I don't want to then, I don't feel right to abandon the client, and then I do all that I can to deliver it. And to be honest, that's the rewarding part of it, is that I always get good feedback from clients. And I actually won an award last year for being a client focus for excellence in client services.
Oh, wow. What award was that?
So that was the Reisman Award, organized. It was for law firms, and they flew me to Nashville in the United States. And
congratulations.
Thank you, Jen. So sometimes, you may not, in that moment, it feels like a lot of hard work, and and too many hours in front of the computer. But then when you receive, or when your work is recognized, then you feel like,
That's
okay,
amazing.
it's worth something.
Yeah. So how have you found having your business then? You've been doing it since 2019. Are you glad you made the switch?
Yeah, I think it's taught me a lot. It's been a steep learning curve in terms of confidence. I think I was a different person in 2019 or before that. And yeah, I feel like having your own business teaches you, it does teach you a lot, because no 2 days are the same, right?
Yeah.
And because you're wearing so many hats, you acquire all sorts of skills. You know,
Yeah.
Jen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's so good for our personal growth as well, because, you know, we keep learning new things, mastering new skills, and you never know, we might just use them at some point or the other in our lives.
I love that about having a business, that you can be constantly learning.
Yeah.
And for me, I absolutely love that every week I'm like, what can I learn this week? Because there's so many things that are changing in this world for us that will help us run our businesses as well.
Yeah. Well, honestly, Jen, you are the absolute role model, if I may say so. I don't know how you do it. So many businesses, female fusion in itself, it's commendable, really.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean it.
I mean, from a female fusion perspective, I look at things and go, what do I need in my business? Or what would I need? If I was at this stage, what would I need? Because I've had my businesses for over 20 years. And I remember being stuck at certain places and just wishing either there was somebody to talk to, or there was information that I could access, or ways that I could learn things that I didn't have access to that network. So that's basically how we're doing it on a global scale, which is quite cool.
Yeah. No, it definitely translates into, you know, everything that we see, because the online portal as well. I've gone through so many of the modules myself.
Oh, good.
Yeah. I especially love the mindset one, because you know, all the other skills are amazing to have as well, but if you don't have the right mindset,
do you know one thing that I think is so cool that we have in our membership that a lot of our members haven't even tapped into is we do monthly mindset coaching. I don't know if you've attended any of those live.
I did one of them last month.
So that was with Alexandra in Canada, I think.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we alternate between Alex in Canada and Trisha, who is British, but she lives in the UAE.
Okay.
And so we have kind of a mix from around the world. And I love sitting in on those sessions, like if I have time, because I think sometimes we're so busy and you're like, oh, mindset coaching, I don't need that. My mindset's great. But it's just having the ability to sit there for an hour, switch everything else off, and just take it all in. And I find that when I do that, if I make the time for that, because what our mindset coaches deliver is amazing, that I feel that just my creativity goes like that. That it's just, it gives me such a boost where you never would have thought about that.
Yeah. You're so right. And I mean, just even female fusion, I just love the fact that it's a safe space. And as you said, we can learn from each other. If we're struggling with something, I'm sure there's plenty of support. And I think that's how it should be. Women should uplift one another, and
nice girls only. That's my view. Honestly, like really, if you're not nice, if you're not supportive, if you're not collaborative, it's not the right place for you. And, you know, if you're somebody who looks at it and goes, well, I just want to win business and get jobs off of people, that's not really what it's about either, because there's so much more to building your business.
Of course.
And if you don't have those other things in place, your business isn't going to grow anyways.
Yeah, of course. And why would anyone want to isolate themselves? You know, it's just so great to be part of a group where, you know, you have that sense of belonging, and
everybody's nice, you know, and that's like, I love that. I really try, and the team try really hard, that, you want to walk in the room and just be surrounded by really nice people
Yeah.
who kind of get it. And it doesn't matter if she's just starting out and she has an
Yeah.
8-figure business,
Yeah.
that everybody has commonality and they're able to support each other. We had one member who I was talking to, and she has an 8-figure business, really,
Wow.
really successful business. And she said to me, she's like, I've been angel investing in some of the female fusion businesses.
Wow.
I was like, I did not.
Wow.
And, that to me was so cool as well, that we
Yeah.
can be a catalyst for that we're banging on all the time saying, there's not enough funding that are going to female-owned businesses. And then to see that through our connections in the community that women are doing that and investing in each other, which is cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's geek out on the law.
Yes.
Okay.
Purely
because
law.
I'm sure that I want to give so much value to our members, and it doesn't matter where they are in the world or where people are listening. I think a lot of the legal things as it relates to your business can be the same. Obviously, there's local variations, and you have to apply them differently compared to what the law is in your country. And
Correct.
hopefully everybody knows that if you're in, America, you need to follow the rules there, or Canada,
Correct.
or the UK, or Greece, or the UAE.
Correct.
Everybody has different laws, but there are certain legal principles I think that we should all be following. The first one I wanted to talk to you about, let's start at the very beginning of somebody's business journey, because a lot of times what happens is people will set up a business. They'll either, if they're in the UK or Europe, they'll incorporate their business or they'll get a trade license depending upon where they are. And then they'll think, okay, that's good. I'm an entrepreneur. I have a business. I'm good to go. And they skip the legal stuff.
Yeah.
What are some of the basics? Like if you are getting started in business, what would you recommend are the key legal things that you need to think about?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Jen. You mentioned that business owners, they register a company or get a trade license, but sometimes they don't even do that, because so many business owners start out as sole proprietors, so they don't have a formal structure to their business, which is okay, because as an entrepreneur, I know you're so passionate about your ideas and the business itself that sometimes you don't tend to think about these legal points that could actually have a huge impact on your business in the future. So I would say that the starting point is to assess what is the best structure for your business. There are advantages of being a sole proprietor, but then there are disadvantages as well. Whereas there are advantages of being a limited company, but then there are some not disadvantages, but there are reporting requirements and all these
tax
extras,
returns and
tax returns,
KYCs and anti-money laundering and all of these different things.
Correct.
So let's talk about the risks as a sole proprietor. Now, those change depending upon where the country is. So, for example, in Europe, and I've been lucky that I've had businesses in a number of different countries. In a number of countries, if you're a sole proprietor, you don't have to register or incorporate a company. You just go, okay, I'm Betty. I'm going to have this company. I'm calling it XYZ. You don't need to register anything, and you can accept payments in your
personal,
in your personal bank account.
Correct.
In other countries, you can't do that. So, for example, and I just want to clarify that before we jump into things, because, for example, in the Middle East, and that's mainly the GCC region, there's no such thing as that you actually have to pay the money to the government every year to be recognized, even if you're a sole trader.
Okay.
So that's, but some people don't do that because they're used to maybe being in the UK where, you don't need to do that. So they'll think, I can go here and do that and I don't need to be registered.
Okay. Yeah.
So just anybody listening to that, if you are in those countries, legally you have to do the right thing.
Correct. And also bear in mind that as a sole proprietor, your liability is always unlimited. That is, which is not a great situation to be in.
And it's like that everywhere in the world. Everywhere in the world.
So if, God forbid, if your business goes south, your personal assets could be used to pay off any debts that you might have collected
Right.
in the process. But
Goodbye car, goodbye house.
yeah, I mean, yes, God forbid,
Potentially,
but
yeah.
yeah. So, yeah, I think the starting point is to assess what business structure is best for you. Sometimes, you could start with one business structure. So, for example, if you're not, if you don't have the resources to start a company and go through all of those requirements, you start out as a sole trader, but then your business evolves, you're doing well, you're scaling, then think of registering as a company.
So almost you test your business idea first to make sure that it's actually going to work. If you're not ready to take that step to go and register as a limited liability company, and
Correct.
then so you're testing that business idea, it really works. You're really busy, and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going with it, and then you register.
Yeah.
Then it's time.
Well,
And I'm surprised though,
yeah.
like some people who have big businesses, like 7-figure businesses, and they're trading as a sole trader.
Well, I mean,
Right. You're like,
yeah,
it's a bit
yeah.
risky.
It is very, very
Yeah.
risky. And to be honest, I always advise clients to register as a company at the outset.
Yeah.
I mean, the worst that will happen is, if you want to stop trading, it's just such a simple procedure at Companies House. You can
In the
dissolve your
UK,
company.
yes. In the UAE, not a simple procedure.
Okay, okay.
But yeah, absolutely. Here in the UK, it's really easy to do that. And I
Yeah.
think in most countries in Europe, it's relatively easy to go and do that.
Yeah. But even in the Middle East, even if there are there's like a lot of paperwork to go through, I still think you'd rather be safe than sorry.
Yeah.
And it's just probably worth going through the headache.
Well, and it is, there is a cost to having a business.
Of course.
And
Of
I
course.
think that's one thing that businesses need to be aware of, that if you're going to set up a business, it's not going to cost nothing.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
if you set up a services-based business, your setup costs are going to be lower, and your ability probably to start charging customers, you'll be able to do that sooner.
Yeah.
But it's still
There are overheads always.
always.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you don't have that money, that maybe it's not the right time to set up a business either.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. But one can't escape overheads.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, so we've got our company structure.
Yes.
And for that, if it's complicated, I think it's always good to consult a lawyer to make sure that you get the right structure. But if
Correct.
it's something more simple, you're able to do the registration yourself in whatever country you're in, basically.
That's correct. And it's also probably good to consult a lawyer to understand the tax implications that come with the business structure. So you'd rather be aware of all the tax implications at the outset than, be surprised later on.
And that's actually a really good point, because probably about 15 years ago, my other business that I had, I set up a company in Brussels.
Okay.
And I didn't think too much of it, that my main business, my first business, was in the UK. It was based in London. And we had so much business in Brussels, and we were working with the European Commission and Parliament. That was when the UK was in the EU.
In the EU.
And so I was like, I need to have a presence there.
Yeah.
And I got a physical office, had team, all of these things. But what had happened is I had asked my accounting firm for their advice to go and do it. And you would think that an accounting firm would understand,
Yeah,
but
the
they
tax.
did not. And instead what they did is they set it up as a second limited liability company in Belgium rather than as a branch. And so, yeah, and you know that. And so what happened is it cut my tax allowance for
Yeah.
my business in the UK.
Correct.
So what that meant is actually I had a bigger tax bill in the UK that I had to pay because the registration was done incorrectly. So we had to completely deregister the business. And that actually was quite expensive. That cost quite a lot of money, that we had to deregister the business and reset it up again as a branch.
Yeah.
Actually, Belgium is not easy. The UK is easy, Belgium not
Not
easy.
easy. My God, Jen, you really have global experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's things like that people
Yeah.
don't think about, right?
Yeah.
Because they go, oh, I'm going to have an office here. I'm going to set one up in that country. And especially when it comes to things like taxation, you need to really be
Of
clear
course.
on what the
Yeah.
implications are for that.
Of course. Yeah. 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 Um, these are points to think about for sure. But once you've set up and you have that out of the way, then comes the fun stuff. But then there's also a checklist that every entrepreneur should kind of follow. So make sure you have any kind of licenses that you might need. Some are industry specific
Yeah.
licenses, some are geographical licenses. For example, if you're a restaurant owner, you probably need, health, like food and hygiene
Yeah.
licenses. If you're in the construction industry, health and safety rules. You need relevant insurance policies, depending on which industry you're
Yeah.
working in.
But every business
Every
needs
business
insurance.
needs, yeah.
It does not matter where in
Yeah.
the world you are. How many businesses actually have insurance? Not, I come across quite a few that don't. I'm sure you do as well.
Yeah, honestly, that should be one of the, I actually would categorize it as a legal essential.
Yeah.
And it's actually not even a legal essential, it just is a business essential to have the relevant insurance policies. For example, if you are a professional, you need to have professional indemnity insurance. If you're employing people, you need to have employer's liability insurance. Or if you're offering products, product liability insurance. So depending on what your offering is, make sure you are in contact with insurers and you have the adequate covers in place.
But I think people don't do it. One, because they're trying to save money in the beginning, but I think also as well because there's no list. Like nobody
Yeah.
tells you, right? Like when I don't know about you when you set up your business, the first business I had, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And you
Tell
kind of
me
you
about it,
ask
Jen.
questions and you talk to people,
It's
and
all
back
trial
then
and error.
it was all trial and
Yeah,
error, right?
yeah,
Which is why I'm like so passionate about
yeah,
this in female fusion that I'm like,
yeah,
let me save you the time and the money
yeah.
that will give you all of this information within female fusion, because
Yeah,
you shouldn't have to
definitely.
try and work out
And
where
it's
it is.
daunting, to be honest. Okay, as a lawyer, I'm regulated by the SRA, so I knew I have to, fulfill all of the SRA's requirements. So I needed professional indemnity insurance. We can't offer advice without that. But yeah, all of the other stuff, yeah, it's for us to figure by ourselves. And
But do you know what's interesting is, and I think it depends upon where your business is registered or licensed. So in the UK, you have to do it, but the government doesn't check. And people get away with it until something happens. And then you do not. But even in the UK, it's not that expensive, really, in the grand scheme of things, to get this sort of insurance that you need to run your business. But for the business that I have, so Female Fusion, we are licensed in the UAE and Dubai. And the authority that licenses us, every year that we do the renewal of our license, because we have to pay a fee every year, that they ask for proof of our insurance. Which I think is really good. They ask for proof of our insurance. They ask for our audited accounts as well. So I have to get the business audited every year. And what I found is that actually, when it comes to things like if you want to open a bank account, if you want a credit card, if you want to any sort of corporate stuff where you need to have approvals or have a payment gateway, that you get approved right away. Because to them they go, oh, your license is from there. Well, you're good because we know that your accounts are audited and they get checked, and that you have insurance and that you're running your business properly. So we can trust you.
Yeah. It definitely adds credibility and it mitigates risk for you.
Totally.
As well.
But I'm very risk adverse, right? I always think, and maybe it's because in my one of my first jobs, I did a lot of crisis management.
Okay.
And so my brain is always trained to think 10 steps ahead about what if this, what if this, what if this. And so then I think backwards and go, but I don't ever want to get sued.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to have this insurance. We need that insurance. And, you know, it's making sure you have that in place to protect your business.
Yeah. No, that is great, Jen. To be honest, that's how lawyers think, and I'm surprised you don't have a law degree.
I think my mum wishes that I was a lawyer.
I think you partly are.
Yeah.
It's just on paper you don't have the degree, but by experience you
Got
are.
street smarts. Yeah, that's all.
No, but it's great. It's great when business owners are this aware. And are able to because business is a labor of love. So if you're able to protect it, that's amazing.
Oh, that's a really nice way to describe it, right? That it is, you know, and it is our labor of love, that you put in so much love.
Of course.
That you want it to, you know, and it's like with Female Fusion, I just love it so much that we want to protect it because it's a business for everybody as well.
And, you know, yeah, I can tell because the energy of Female Fusion is so great, and I can tell. You put in a lot of passion and love into it.
It's because we love our members. That's why. So okay, so one thing we were talking about briefly just before we started filming as well. Sometimes small businesses, especially in the beginning, like to do things as cheaply as possible.
Yes. Yeah.
And I see this all the time. And look, I hold my hand up in the very beginning, not with Female Fusion because I've learned, but with previous businesses, I've done things like, where can I buy a template? And, you know, where can I find this so I don't have to pay a lawyer? Because that kind of scared me, that I was like, but I don't have the money.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of businesses do this. So I see that they do it either that they find websites, mainly in America, where they will go and buy a template.
Correct.
Use those templates for whatever it is that they're looking for. Or the other thing that they'll do, which is really, really naughty, is they will look at somebody who's doing something similar to them and they will copy it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shouldn't be doing that. And you know, I even saw one instance where a business did that, was to one of our members, and they didn't even change, like they didn't even go through and check the terms, and so it actually had the name of the other business in the terms, and you were like, can't you use Command
really
F, you know, and find and change? So big no. But what advice would you give to business? Because there are some that are just bootstrapping and we want to be able to help them do the best that they possibly can.
Yeah, no, I totally appreciate this because I have had clients, you know, who are sort of cash strapped and feel like it's a lot to invest in. But the only thing I'd say is prevention is better than cure. So think of it as a step that you must take to prevent, you know, further legal costs. You don't want to fall into trouble and then actually end up spending more money. So when you're starting a business, you know, try and allocate a little budget for your legal framework as well. And you don't need to do everything all at once. It can be just prioritize what's super.
So what would you say would be the priority ones that a small business should look at? Should it be things like on the digital space, so your terms and conditions on your website, your privacy policy?
So terms and conditions are super important, whether you have an e-shop or even otherwise, because terms and conditions or a service agreement, people do it, you know, either or. Any form is fine. But that actually outlines the expectations between you and your client. And that, I think, is definitely a document every business should have. And whether you're offering products or services doesn't matter, but having terms and conditions, because your terms and conditions will have terms of payment. What happens if there's a defect in the product? And of course, every country has consumer laws and your terms should reflect that. If you're a service provider, for example, some of my clients are coaches. So, you know, in their terms and conditions, I have a rescheduling policy, a cancellation policy. What if there's a no-show? You know, what happens then? Limitation of liability. What is the coach liable for? What you as a service provider are liable for, disclaimers, all of this is, very clearly and systematically documented in your service agreement or service level agreement or terms and conditions. So this is a document that's very, very important.
First document you need, probably.
Yes, I would say so. So the first two, I'd say, depending on where you are, like for example, in the UK, data protection is very important.
Yes.
And I know in the UAE as well, in 2002, there have been amendments to the privacy law, and now you need to have a documented privacy policy even in the UAE.
Yeah. Most countries do. I mean, there's a few that don't. But, the thing is if you're doing business internationally, I sort of feel that we should be doing it to an international standard.
Absolutely.
And even things like GDPR, that even though for us as a business, we don't necessarily have to follow GDPR, it's good business practice. It's kind of ethical business practice in a way.
Absolutely. But, you'd be, well, it's not a surprise, but because the GDPR is so robust that every country is now modeling its privacy law based on that. So that's the benchmark.
Yeah.
And if you have your privacy notice that, ticks all the boxes on the GDPR legislation, that's it. You're good. So I'd say a privacy notice, terms and conditions. These are the two main documents that you must start out with. Of course, if you are employing, if you already have staff, employment contracts are important, or if you are outsourcing some of the work to contractors, then you need to have a freelancer agreement or an independent contractor agreement. But
those are really important, actually. And a lot of times small businesses will try and cut corners and not do that. And that can put you at risk. I see a lot of times people have not wanted to pay for it. And then there's a dispute that happens. Maybe that person hasn't delivered the work, or they paid the person in advance and they didn't get the information. Because when we onboard contractors, they, we get a copy of their passport, we know where they live, we have contact information. So even if we do pay in advance, but normally we pay after the work is delivered, that you know who you're dealing with and you've done your due diligence for that person.
Yeah, I mean, it's due diligence, but even on a deeper level, sometimes they may be privy to your business's confidential information. Correct. They may have access to your intellectual property, and those are they're intangible, but they are very valuable assets.
Yes.
And you need to protect them at all costs. So it's very important to have a document, where you have these obligations with any third party you're dealing with.
Even if it's your friend or a family member as well. And I say that to people because I've seen, and people will say to me, oh, I went into business with my friend, and then, this happened or that happened. And it doesn't matter, even if it's her childhood friend, to make sure that you have a service agreement of some kind in place to go and protect both parties as well.
And to make sure there's no ambiguity, to make sure that actually if you have a clear agreement, you can prevent disputes as well. And verbal agreements, I don't want to get too technical, but verbal agreements are valid, but it's just so hard to enforce them,
Of course.
Which is why I always tell people that, okay, a verbal agreement or a handshake agreement is fine. Technically it is valid, but then it's so difficult to prove who said what. You'd rather just have it in writing.
Yeah. And I think that's really important to be able to have that, because you want it to be clear for everybody, because I don't like disputes. I don't like the
me neither.
confrontation. It just feels, especially when you're trying to run your business.
Yeah.
And when you hire somebody, you want to be able to have that in writing to say, this is what you're doing. This is our obligations. This is what we're going to pay you. This is when we're going to pay you. And
Absolutely.
that makes it clear and fair for everybody. But sometimes business owners, especially if you haven't done that before, they feel quite uncomfortable with that, or like, oh, it's my friend or it's my brother, or I don't feel comfortable doing that. But actually, that's the best thing you can do to really protect that relationship as well.
Of course, yeah. I was just going to say, it's not only protecting the business, but I think it's protecting that relationship as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely we need agreements. So we have that. Those are the essentials at the beginning.
Correct.
Now our business grows. We're doing well. We've maybe, and I think this happens when you've really had your business idea proven and you've hit over, $100,000, £100,000 turnover or revenue, that really shows you that you're onto something. You're a 6-figure business now. Things are going well. What other things do business owners need to think about at that point?
Well, at that point, take stock of where your business is at and how it's evolved. So if there are new offerings that you've added, make sure your terms and conditions are updated.
Yeah.
So keep updating your documents to reflect where your business is at. If your team has grown, again, make sure you have employment contracts. In every country or every jurisdiction, they have there are obligations that an employer has to fulfill. So make sure you are following
Fulfilling
the
them.
legal requirements as well. The other it's great if your business has expanded, and if you're actually thinking of franchising, then franchise agreements come into play. So you have franchise agreements. Make sure you're protecting your intellectual property, because your brand is now valuable, and you don't want anyone misappropriating your brand, your confidential information. So if you are dealing with third parties, have all those documents in place, whether it's non-disclosure agreements or just agreements that protect your IP. I think these are the documents that you should consider if you are growing your business.
Okay. And what about, at what point should a business start thinking about things like intellectual property as well?
So honestly, as soon as they can.
Okay.
Yeah, right at the outset, because and it actually starts with, in a way, it's step one, because, before you actually finalize the name, you should be running a search. In the UK, whether it's Companies House or similarly in the UAE or any other country, make sure the name is available, and that you're not copying someone else's existing trade name or trademark.
Yeah.
So that actually is step one, because then what happens is, if you haven't realized and then suddenly you get a notice saying,
painful, right?
Yeah.
That happens.
And you don't want that, because you've already invested in your branding, and then it's actually rather sad to have to change the name and then reinvest in branding. So I think that should actually be step one. Run a search to see that the name you're thinking of trading under, if that's available or not.
Okay.
And then once you have the budget, consider protecting your trademark with the intellectual property office, or if you are into tech and then there are innovations and inventions and those sort of things, then that would be subject matter for patent protection. So there are different categories of intellectual property protection available for different types of subject matter.
And this is why an IP lawyer, I guess, would be really handy. Do you cover IP as well, or you have?
So the funny thing, Jen, is that I started out as an IP lawyer.
Okay, so Geeta is our lady, our IP lady within Female Fusion.
Because I did my master's, my entire master's degree was in intellectual property law, because I love the subject. It's a vast subject, and I could be talking about it for hours and hours. But it's very interesting, very, very important. And, all these big tech giants, the millions that they've earned is all thanks to their intellectual property.
Yeah.
It's just that when I started my own practice, I had to diversify, and I could no longer just restrict myself to IP matters. And ironically now, I hardly do IP matters. Everything is contracts. Everything is commercial.
Well, maybe when people listen to this interview, they might go, "Oh, Geeta's my lady for helping me with IP," because it is so important to get that that done as well. That's one of the things that we did for Female Fusion very early on as well, because I realized that as the brand was growing, that there were people who were starting to copy us.
Oh, yeah. See, there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I don't know if it, well, no, it was deliberate, because people would look at it and go, oh, well, that looks super easy. That's the whole thing. We make it look easy. And there have been a number of either groups on Facebook or people who have tried to set
Yeah.
up businesses.
Yeah.
And I'm very protective of that IP now, that I will,
Yeah.
I will fight back on that, because that's something that
Yeah.
I've worked very hard on for a number of years, that you have to protect that as well.
Yeah. And it's also responsibility towards consumers. That's the whole idea of intellectual property law. You cannot deceive consumers. So anything that's misleading is then caught under IP law,
Yes.
and then you have the right to, you can enforce your rights.
One thing I would say about that, I don't know if you agree or not, but I've seen a few occasions where businesses have just started out, and they have heard different things where people have said, oh, intellectual property is really important, and they've actually met lawyers who said to them, yeah, we have to do the intellectual property. But the registration process, depending upon the country that you're in, can be quite expensive.
Yeah. The UAE is very expensive.
Oh, the UAE is incredibly expensive. You're looking at about $3,000 to put in an application for intellectual property.
And then every stage you incur more costs.
Correct. Yeah. So it's not easy.
Yeah.
And so I would say to people as well that be sure that that's a business idea that you're going to run with, that don't just go out, because there's a couple businesses that I've met who were told that they should do part of their whole setup of their business is that they should have incorporated or done their intellectual property as well. And they spent a lot of money doing the intellectual property.
Yeah.
And then the business idea didn't work. So there needs to be a certain bit of making sure, especially if it's a brand new startup, unless it's really tech intensive. Do you need the IP in the beginning? Well, if you don't have any customers, probably not.
Yeah, I agree. Actually, there's no right or wrong answer here, because like you said, sometimes it could be very expensive. In the UK, fortunately, it's not very expensive.
It's about £300, isn't it?
So the government fee is 170, and they've made it quite easy. You can just log into the IPO website, and then they've got a guide, and you can actually follow the guide and even do it by yourself. Of course, if you're not feeling confident, then commissioning a lawyer to do it. But even then, I think it should be under £500, which is not too bad. So I was quite surprised as well when I started seeing IP registrations in Dubai and how expensive they were.
And it's the UAE became part of the World Intellectual Property Organization about almost 2 years ago now, and we all thought that the fees were going to go down, and we thought, oh, it'll be great, our fees will be like what people are paying in the UK, and they have not. They're still exactly the same. The only thing that's different is you can then go to WIPO and register in a number of other countries as well.
So that's the thing with intellectual property rights. They are territorial, which is why you have to then register in every jurisdiction. If that's the market you want to exploit, then it is recommended that you do that. Now, for example, with my law firm, it is a registered trademark, but only in the UK, because my practice is very local. So I don't have it registered in multiple jurisdictions.
But you can, in Europe, can you register for the whole EU?
You can. And then you have like a centralized registration system under the Madrid Protocol, it's called, wherein you fill one form, you designate the countries that you want protection in.
Why can't it be easy? Not everywhere, right?
I know. No. And I do appreciate it can be an expensive process. And that's something that a business should think about. So I think a good idea would be to just focus on the jurisdiction or the market that you want to exploit, and assess, whether whether you want to register your trademark or not. What's more important, I think, is make sure you're starting with a name that is available so that there are no claims against you. I think that's what's important, because once you've done that due diligence and you have that proof, you took all these steps, you ran a search, there was nothing, on the register that was similar or identical.
But isn't it important, like how it seems like such a small step, but it's actually such an important building block for your business.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, so before I named my practice, I had thought of another name, but that wasn't available.
Yeah. And that's hard as more and more people set up businesses, just to find names that aren't already taken, and domain names as well. One of my first businesses, I had like a 4-digit domain name .com.
Oh,
right? Like that'll be worth like so much money now.
Yeah.
You're never able to get things like that.
Yeah.
So it's just, being able to do all of those things right at the beginning.
Yeah.
So I have one last question for you. And I think this is one thing that business owners struggle with a lot. So legal expenses can vary a lot. And, I understand that, right? Because it reflects also the amount of work that lawyers put in, plus the value and all of that sort of stuff. It's important. But how can a small business maybe get the legal support that they want, but maybe not have those huge fees that they're scared of? Because a lot of times they don't go to a lawyer because they're scared that it's going to cost too much money.
Yeah. And I think this is where we as lawyers should consciously start being more approachable, and that's what I always try and be, because I know the perception about lawyers, but there are friendly lawyers
Geeta's
that
friendly.
exist.
Here's Geeta.
No, but jokes apart, I think there's lots of lawyers and legal professionals who are breaking away from the traditional billable hour model and offering fixed fee services. As you know, I started in 2019 and then the pandemic hit us. So my entire practice, 80% of it is actually 80 or 90% of it is fixed fee basis only.
Okay.
So that there are no hidden costs. My clients know how much they should budget. And
that's a great tip, actually, to find a lawyer who's going to quote you fixed fees rather than hourly.
Yeah. And for a lot of the pieces of work that is possible. So, for example, for me, I draft agreements or I review agreements, and that's what I'll do on a fixed fee basis. If it's a consultation, then it has to be at an hourly charge out rate. And even the hourly charge out rate, everything is very transparent. We are meant to be very transparent with fees, and for example, I actually have my price menu on my website as well.
I think that's great.
Yeah. And of course, with every year that might change, but it's just an indicative. It's an indication of what you can expect.
Yeah.
So I think these are some of the options. During COVID, I also started offering payment plans because. Businesses were struggling at the time. So I just feel that I tell business owners, don't be scared. Talk to a lawyer. Tell them what your struggles are. And you never know, there might just be a solution. So there can be fixed fees, there can be payment plans. And like that, you can reach a solution.
But you need a lawyer. Or
you need a lawyer.
Within your entrepreneurial journey, you are going to need a lawyer.
Yeah.
And when you're in Female Fusion, you get to meet Geeta, and we have lawyers throughout Female Fusion. And so I'm
happy to help always.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Geeta. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for geeking out on the law with me today.
Pleasure. I hope our listeners have taken something back with them, and they don't have to be scared about law.
Absolutely.
And their legals. Just find a friendly lawyer who will help you through things.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Women on the Rise podcast.
Thanks, Jen. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Women on the Rise podcast and our 30 most inspiring female entrepreneurs. If you are inspired by today's episode, why not come and join us in Female Fusion? We would absolutely love to have you. This is where you will be able to connect with the most incredible female entrepreneurs who are all committed to building a most profitable business. All you need to do is head over to femalefusionnetwork.com/join. I look forward to seeing you on the inside.